Hi. Before I begin, I must tell you that I appreciate the time you're taking out right now to educate yourself by listening to this introduction on tenant representation. Many organizations fail because they feel that they don't have the time to invest in educating themselves, especially on certain fundamentals that would otherwise be a great benefit to their success. You've already distinguished yourself from those people, and I appreciate that. Let me begin by addressing the first question. I'm typically asked by companies who are seeking representation, how much will representation cost? I enjoy hearing this question because it tells me that the person asking the question already understands the value of hiring a professional. The most valuable thing to a successful person is time. This is why successful people hire accountants to do their taxes, secretaries to answer their calls, and attorneys to handle their legal battles. One could argue that they could do their own taxes and answer their own calls or represent themselves in court, but it wouldn't be the best use of their time. Rather, they rely on people who specialize in these services and do them every day. Real estate's not any different, and can typically be one of the largest financial and time-consuming tasks that a company makes. Many companies are pretty surprised when they learn that hiring tenant representation for their company is free. I have to be careful when I use the term free, because tenant reps don't work pro bono. They're typically compensated by the landlord. Now I must address an assumption that might arise, mostly by those who don't appreciate professionals, as we discussed just previously. And that assumption would be, wouldn't I get a better deal if I did the transaction all on my own, because the landlord wouldn't have to pay for my representation? The answer to this is no. Typically you wouldn't get a better deal, because that commission is already put aside for their own representation. Landlords don't want to represent themselves either, and therefore they hire a landlord representative to do the work for them. Landlords agree to pay their representation a certain amount, let's say $1,000 for example. Then the landlord's rep will offer half of that amount, $500, to attract a tenant rep to bring them a tenant. Landlord could care less if the prospective tenant hires representation, because they've already allocated money for their own representation, of which they have to pay regardless. Now, these are just examples, and every deal is different. Many larger companies pay their reps a consulting fee to show their appreciation of the work these agents do for them on their behalf. And that's respectable practice, but it's uncommon, and it's pretty rare to hear about that in the industry. Another question companies ask is, where do we find such an agent, and how do we hire them to represent us and our interests? Since commercial real estate is vastly different from residential, the first thing you must do is make sure you're hiring an agent who specializes only in commercial real estate. There are many residential agents who dabble in commercial, and that's at their client's expense, which can lead to serious liability down the road. To hire a commercial rep, once you've located one, you typically need to sign a non-binding agreement called a tenant rep agreement, or a tenant representative agreement. This agreement basically outlines your relationship with the agent you hire. And I'm using agent and representative interchangeably here, so don't let that confuse you. And that protects them from unethical clientele as far as the tenant rep agreement. The agreement states that the company is hiring this particular agent to handle all their real estate needs. Once that agreement is sent back to the tenant rep, he or she will then begin working for you or the company as an independent contractor, which is what you want. Your tenant rep will locate properties that best fit your business model. He'll analyze demographics, traffic counts, and the surrounding competition, so to strategically locate the best space for your company. However, although many companies like the idea of not having to spend tons of time and money on gas searching for properties, site selection is only one of the services a tenant rep performs. A true representative also analyzes the market to ensure you're getting a fair price on the location you choose. They handle the negotiations for your company, keeping your anonymity, and they proofread the contracts before you sign. They will provide suggestions and possible revisions to the contracts before you sign them, and that is one of the most significant advantages in hiring a tenant representative. Most landlord contracts are biased towards the landlord, and for good reason. A good tenant rep can spot these biases in a contract and will make recommendations to either have them removed or revised. It's always recommended that the company hires an attorney to make the suggestions or alterations to the contract, because the agent can't perform legal actions for the company. They can only make suggestions or express opinions of the contract, which is very helpful, and it's always good to have two sets of eyes looking over a contract before you sign away your company's liability, especially since these contracts are landlord-based. Anyway, I hope this introduction has been informative and helps you understand all the benefits of hiring representation for your real estate needs.